don't you take them, Margaret?
Yeah, I'll take the microphone if you want to use the podium.
Sure.
Okay. And,
he had his hand up.
yes, I'll start over here on this side.
How much has federal government regulations, restrictions, and APA affected the impact on you guys?
A lot. And I would say Senator Hinojosa from the Valley sponsored a bill here in Texas this last session that brought it was called the NEPA process back to Texas to use our team and staff without having to wait on the federal bureaucracy to do that. I know this went through your, Senator, this went through your committee.
The worst damage from the EPA and the regulators at the federal level occurred really about 10, 15 years ago. I would say in the most recent years, hard to believe, but the last 5 or 6 years, from a highway standpoint, we haven't had them trying to over-regulate like they have in other industries, like the coal industry and things like that.
But we do have to be careful, even here in East Texas, of air quality issues too, because of the.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question about the total revenues from your tax, transportation tax. Well, I heard a lot of figures, but I didn't hear. How much did the revenues increase over that 24-year period? And how much
for fuel tax and stuff?
what I pay at the gas pump?
Okay.
How much has it increased, and how much this year will you be getting?
I think from fuel tax we get about 2.3 billion. From vehicle registration fees, I think it's about 1.5 billion, something like that. It is increasing less than 0.5% per year. I did a 5-year projection based on the comptroller estimate, and it's almost exactly flat, but it's slightly.
And that's at the gross level. If you come down, as a reminder, the federal tax, I believe, was last raised in 1993 to its level of 18.4 cents right now. And at the state level, it was last raised to 20 cents in 1991. If you look at the purchasing power of that, take Texas, of 20 cents, that 20 cents was the same in 1991 as it is today. The price per gallon has gone up while that goes up. And the purchasing power of that 20 cents is barely 7 or 8 cents right now. And over time, that will have a potential decline, all things being equal, because of more efficient vehicles.
One of the things that you haven't mentioned, the 20-cent gas tax, what percentage is being pulled away from transportation and roads and dedicated to education? I think it's somewhere between 45 and 48.
It's 25%. As you'll notice, the severance tax I showed a while ago, 25%. There's an awful lot of, there's a long list of revenue streams that have a percentage. Can y'all still hear me okay?
Yeah.
There's a lot of revenue streams the state gets, and the school gets 25% of each. So of the 20 cents per gallon, 5 cents goes to school, 15 cents goes to the roads.
There are some other allocations that go to DPS, the Attorney General's office, and a few other very small items as well. So of that 20 cents, TxDOT does not receive 100%. And I know Speaker Strauss has come out and said, truth in taxation, to where we want 100% of the motor vehicles tax to go there. That may not happen, but it's good to think about.
I go to Louisiana fairly frequently, and every time that I do, I get reminded of just how good the roads are in Texas. So I agree some of what you said. However, I want to point out an omission to all of your discussion and all of the statistics. I heard nothing about a serious, sustained effort to reduce construction cost, particularly as it is possible through better contracts. And I have deeply ingrained on my brain the 3 years of watching TxDOT constructing Loop 281 here in Longview, and it was not a pretty sight. It was bumbling and stumbling and incompetence on display. So it is stuck in my mind that surely, with an intelligent and determined effort, some of this massive explosion in construction costs can be overcome. I know that I've delved a little into the contracting that is done by the city, and there's glaring opportunity to make that better. And I sense overall there's we've always done it this way mentality that pervades. And TxDOT does not enjoy a good reputation within the state. And so my question to you is, have you really done anything that is serious and sustained to pressure the contractors to do a much more efficient and cost-effective job of construction? And I come from a benchmark of the auto industry.
Let him answer the question.
And so I know that opportunity is rife. Thank you.
You said quite a bit, and I appreciate part of what you brought up. And I'm going to use a couple examples here in Gregg County. A couple years ago, I said Judge Stout, I wish he was here, I would say, has made a couple comments to me. Jeff, why can't y'all get it right? Exactly what you said, because you keep coming back and saying, hey, you need to pony up a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. Part of our challenge has been, by the time the contract goes to let, we're using some planning numbers, and we're trying to get better on this. That may have been a few months prior to that, and then by the time you get to letting and sign the contract, costs have gone up, or another raw material or something in there may go up in there in between. To correct that problem, and I have Judge Stout in mind, we just passed at our meeting, commission meeting last month, to prevent that very issue from, or part of the issue, to prevent us going back to the counties. What's going to happen, say it's a $1 million contract. By the time they sign it and TxDOT's doing the work, or we subcontract it out, but the county has to participate. It comes back at 1.1 million. Now we're going to eat that. So we have true and better accountability to have better numbers when we take it out to bid, and better numbers where we can put pressure back on our contractors. Obviously, the larger the contract, the better job we're able to do. We are looking at some new ways to streamline these contracts. There have been some things with design and build where we save some money. We're also looking at some other ways to outsource some of the projects as well, when appropriate. Sure, you mentioned a good point.
I think it's a great point. For many decades, TxDOT did one type of contracting. The engineers in-house would design the project from beginning to end. Then they would issue a list of materials and put it out for bid. As long as you were a qualified bidder, they wanted all the bids they could get, and whoever bid the cheapest got it. And so that got the cost way down.
That's the first mistake, because the lowest...
We don't do that. Thank you very much. But I know when I came on the commission, one of the things we started noticing was it takes too long, and these contractors that have 5 jobs going, and they're moving their equipment around to be the most efficient for them and not necessarily the public. So we began adding and continuing to try to figure out better ways to do these. We began putting value on time. In other words, we lay all the projects out, and then people would bid, but we put a value to time. If you're going to delay congestion due to construction for 3 months, and you're the same price as the other one, well then your project, your bid is more valuable to us. So we began putting incentives in 8-10 years ago. We had to start small and slowly build it so that everybody got used to doing it. And then we at TxDOT learned, when I was on TxDOT learned. Then we tried some other things. We began, instead of us designing, completing the design and then going to bid, we then said, you know, conceptually we all know what we want. We would get a certain amount designed, and then we would let them bid on it, and then let them issue the proposals and let them construct it while they're designing it. We've made some really good projects on that. We've screwed some up on that. We're learning, and I could lay out 2 or 3 more. But there's been a lot of innovative ideas in the last 8 or 10 years we're trying. At the same time, a lot of the more experienced TxDOT employees The ones who were there when all this was done, they've gone. When that thing was at peak of construction in the 70s, I think they had like 21,000 employees. In the 90s, when I was there, we had 14,000 employees. Now you've got 10 or 11.
Just a little 11,800.
So the departments and the people that we've lost an awful lot of experience in that department. I think efforts are being made.
Senator, you mentioned that this is only going to cover part of the problem, not all the problem. And two things I don't like is obviously traffic jams and also staff. One thing that I was thinking that might be a possibility, I don't know if you guys have thought about this or not, but it was mentioned that a lot of the shipping that's coming into the ports that's hitting the roads in Texas, is it possible to start either doing some sort of a tax or a levy on shipping, because a lot of these vehicles may not be Texas registered? And is it also possible to start diverting them from the roads and putting more on the rails?
Well, that's a two-piece question. He touched on, Commissioner Austin touched on part of it. We don't want it to leave the ship and get on the truck. The quicker we can get it off that ship and put it on the rail, much more efficient. So they're spending, TxDOT did not even have any authority on rail until 10 years ago. It used to be the Railroad Commission, but then the Railroad Commission totally got out of the rail business. Am I loud enough, Stephen? I was one of 6 kids. You had to be loud. But TxDOT, Railroad Commission, totally even quit keeping an inventory in 1972. Nobody in this state for quite a few years had anything to do. Just rail is private companies. And in the 80s, when they deregulated, we began ripping up the railroads that had been forced to run lines that were not profitable by the federal government. Reagan said, no regulation. And they said, good, we're going to rip these lines up before y'all make us do it again. And they ripped up 4,000 miles in Texas of rail lines. Now they wish they hadn't done that. And I was at TxDOT waving the flag at the legislature, give us the authority to at least evaluate and salvage some of that. And they did give us TxDOT the authority. So now TxDOT has a rail division, still fairly new, probably 10, 12 years old. And we're going in evaluating things like the ports, major other switching areas where you have congestion on rail. I forgot the second part of the question.
And part of your challenge, coming into the port, so what about taxing those? First of all, right now, there is a tax that is levied on the containers that do come in. It goes into what's called the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. That's taxed at really at the federal level. That trust fund is used across the country to help dredge and maintain the ports. Texas, take the Port of Houston. I believe, I'm pretty close. Last year, I believe they generated about $130 million that went into the fund and received about $25 million back. Obviously, it didn't work. So this last WRDA bill that passed federally helped that where it's going to be spent. What happened over almost $1 billion, 750, 800 million, pretty close, of dollars that were sitting in there. They only spent a little bit. The rest of it swept back into the general revenue. Now it's going to come back in to be used on our ports. As far as using other capacity, part of our exception items is to begin looking at rail modes to connect the ports and get the traffic off the roads and into rail. So we're looking at that. And actually the legislature passed, I think you did this, before you got in, there's a rail plan for safety, etc. But it was unfunded. We have a huge rail need in the state, one to make it safer, but also to add capacity of double track so we can use other modes of transportation.
On the new tax or new fee, a lot of us who run for office promise we're not going to raise taxes or fees. And we've got a lieutenant governor, or I think Patrick, soon to be lieutenant governor, who would not support a tax or a fee increase, and I think Abbott would not either. We can't find any statutes. Of all the statutes on the Capitol grounds, I haven't found one for anybody that raised a tax yet.